your greatness. Welcome to each one of you to the next episode on Unfearing Sutra, dipping into your greatness. And we have a beautiful guest today, and we are joined by Faye, all the way from Australia. So hi, Faye. And we're going to introduce more about you. Thank you so much for doing this with us. And we are truly honored by your presence here. And we can't wait to hear what you're going to talk about. So today's topic is going to be about unfearing birth. Yes, you heard that right. Unfearing birth. Because a lot of us are probably have our own myths around birth, what it is, what it isn't, what should we do. But we're not going to be having an education, a format here. That's not what Faye is going to be doing. Energetically, she's going to be very gently and lovingly, she's going to guide you to unfear birth. Okay, so all you expectant and beautiful mothers and mothers to be, please, this is the place that you want to be. So a little bit about Faye. Faye Suzanne, as we said, is joining us from Perth in Western Australia. She's a mother of 4 young adults, grandmother to 3 beautiful boys, a registered nurse and midwife, prenatal and childbirth educator, energy intuitive, author, and international speaker. Beyond that, let me tell you, lovely people, I love her to bits. She's passionate about empowering women and their partners to have a positive birth experience and create change in the landscape of birth. She's a co-director of Birthing the New Humanity and a co-author in the soon-to-be-released anthology Womb to Thrive, The Missing Keys to Heal Yourself, Your Family, and the Planet. Can't wait for this book, where she writes about soulbirthing in love and not fear. Love, fear. Guys, okay, I know we talk about love and hate or hate and love. The opposite ends of the spectrum, love, fear. Sharing over 34 years of experience in midwifery and private practice as an energy intuitive and natural therapist, Faye has helped hundreds of women and their partners to overcome their fears, achieve a conscious conception, help heal previous birth trauma, and support them to go on to experience positive birth outcomes. Faye is now also focused on assisting fellow birth workers to heal their own birth trauma so that they can be more fully present for the families who they serve, creating better outcomes for all. So let's invite Faye to join us on our podcast today, our video interview as well, to discuss how to unfear birth. So Faye, first I want to welcome you again. Thank you so much for doing this, and a warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much, Anu, again, for inviting me to be part of your wonderful platform. I just love the work that you do and the beautiful audiences that you reach. And yes, I really believe that if we can overcome fear and allow love in, that we can actually change the paradigm of birth and also change humanity and create a world full of peace and love instead of all this war and hatred. Really is the key.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And we can never, have enough of hearing this, because when we talk about healing from birth trauma, especially, and I'd love for you to add more on that as we get into our, episode. There's so much to talk about. You're going to want to hear more from Faye for sure. So Faye, over to you for the first question. Can you tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about you, your background, your family, and the beautiful work that you do? This is more for people to connect with you one-on-one here, and so that they receive complete goodness out of what you're going to actually talk about in our episode today. So over to you, Faye.
Thank you. So as you already shared in my intro, yes, I am a midwife of 34 years. I've worked across all areas of midwifery. So in the hospital system, at home, in birth centres. I worked in a birth centre for 20 years. And I worked in the community as well, attended home births, water births, lotus births, everything at all ends of the spectrum, working in high risk settings as well as low risk settings. And it's given me like this huge amount of wonderful experience. But my most experience has actually come from my experience of being a mother and birthing my own babies. So it gave me a completely different side of birth that I didn't know as a professional. When you work with women birthing, it's completely different to being the birthing woman yourself, where you get to embody birth yourself and having to work through your own fears and traumas in order to birth freely into the world. So, and my story began when I did my midwifery training 34 years ago in a high-risk hospital, learning all about high-risk birth. And after I finished my training, I was lucky enough to go and live in the highlands of Papua New Guinea for 2 years. And so while I was there, I did voluntary work at the local hospital. So it was very different to the hospital that I worked in where I trained. So as you can imagine, up in a setting like that, it's very primitive, like it's one of the Indigenous cultures. Most people walked for days from their village to come into the hospital to birth. And when they arrived, they would either birth on the lawn outside, or if they came into the birthing room, it was just a concrete slab and, and a very old style bed. So most of the women actually just squatted in the corner to give birth. They very rarely got on the bed to give birth. And so I saw a completely different aspect of birth, and most of them, they just, popped out their baby. You just lifted the skirt and there was the baby. And that was a real eye-opener, just to see how they just got on with it and birthed their babies. And also they would go back to work, like if they were working, like my husband at the time, his secretary was pregnant, and we didn't know because the women up there are quite large and they've got very loose-fitting clothing, and so we didn't even know that she was pregnant. And one lunchtime she just disappeared from the office, and then she came back after lunch holding a baby, nursing a baby. So she just wandered up to the hospital in her lunch break, given birth, and then just came back to work breastfeeding her baby. And to me, that just said it all. It's like birth is so normal and so natural, but we have this way of complicating birth. And in our Western society, so many women rely on what they see on TV to inform them around birth, because we've lost that community. So in an Indigenous culture, they grow up in their villages. They're still in village life where everybody is around birth. So young girls, as they're growing up, they get to see birth and witness it. And, I think about the book The Red Tent, that comes to mind if you've read that. That's very much similar to the lifestyle up there. And where if they have complications, they kind of figure it out. And but also, if babies die because they're born prematurely, it's taken as part of life and death. It's all part of the continuum, whereas in our Western society, one of the benefits is that we now have the technology to actually prevent that, so we can keep preterm babies alive. So it was a real difference, like, is this good or is that what's good and bad about Indigenous cultures and Western technology. So it really gave me a good view of birth. If we can keep it normal and natural, then it's the best thing. But where's there a high risk or a problem occurring, then it's good to have, the technology there to support it if we can. However, technology such as TV is actually works against us, because what it does, if you've ever noticed, I don't actually watch TV, I just check out from it now, because it's just instills fear and trauma in people, because it all relies on drama, because drama sells. So if you ever see a birth on TV, chances are it's surrounded by drama. And so people women tend to have fear around birth, because they're disconnected from society, from their culture and their community. So they're relying on what the TV shows them, and they think that is normal. And then so many of their friends as well that might have had a traumatic birth experience are sharing those experiences with them. So that's what they pick up on, and think that, oh my gosh, giving birth is actually painful and it's something to fear. And, there's deep trauma rooted in there, and the trauma doesn't get healed. So, my journey has been around helping those women to heal birth trauma and to recognise fear and where it comes from, and to overcome that. So for the last 33 years, since I've had, I started having children 32 years ago. It's a long time now. And now, so I've got 4 children. And my first one was born in the hospital I trained at because I fell pregnant while I was living in Papua New Guinea, and I flew back to have him. But it was still a nice natural birth in the hospital system. And then my second child came along when I was living back in Australia in Melbourne, and I did some research and found out I got connected with so many of the right people in Melbourne that led me down the path to the more spiritual aspect of birth. So I managed to connect with the spirit of my unborn baby in that pregnancy, and it was the turning point for me to do the work that I do now, so that I journeyed in that through any fears that I might have held around anything to do with birth and trauma from what I'd witnessed in the hospital or any other environment. And my baby was actually channeling through information to me about what she needed healed before she would come in, which I thought was, phenomenal, because I hadn't come in contact with that before. So she actually taught me a lot. And then I met my spirit guides and started this whole journey working with spirit through birth. And I had a beautiful water birth in a freestanding birth centre with an independent midwife. She was born in caul, in the sack. And she was also a lotus birth. So it was very sacred birth. And during that as well, her soul that I was communicating with was there in the room, and she was actually midwifing me through the birth. So that was pretty amazing. And that changed my whole perspective as a midwife and a mother about what was possible in birth. So since then, I've been on this journey to try and recreate that for other women, to take them on that journey. And also I've always wanted to create change around the paradigm of birth and create better birthing options. So I'm working on that, but I would love to create freestanding centres for birth as well, where women have real choice. Then after that, I came back to Perth, had another child 2 years after that, and had a beautiful journey with him as well. And he was a home water birth, which was very spiritual and sacred as well. And I could talk for an hour on each of those births. And then after that, I thought I was done. And then another little soul came and told me that she wanted to also be born. So I went through this process of working with spirit to bring her in. And she was, said all the things she wanted. I asked for all the characteristics I wanted in a child, and I got exactly that. Yeah, she was asking for all these different things like space clearing, creating sacred space for the birth, everything she asked for. And then I provided that for her, and she just had this beautiful birth and was welcomed by the whole family at home again in the shower this time. But all my 4 births actually shaped who I was as a woman, as a mother, and as a midwife. So I've been on that path to actually bring those kind of experiences to women and couples and the babies in the birthing space, so that babies can be born into a space of love, and so that women and couples are actually honoured and respected and given choice and are able to be surrounded by love when they are giving birth, so that they feel, supported and nourished and nurtured, which is really needed in this day and age. At the moment, there's so much fear around birth, so there's so much work to be done.
And aren't we glad that, you're here? As I was hearing your journey, it makes me want to, get pregnant all over again. Please don't laugh. But it's so, even the way you mentioned sacred birth, and I'm just going to share, I'm a mother of 2 beautiful girls. I knew I always wanted to be a mother. I knew exactly the time that I actually wanted to get pregnant. I mean, when I used to share this back then, I was called, fool. You're imagining things, you're hallucinating. There's an illusion. But I knew exactly that. I even went back to my gynecologist and I said, I know I'm going to have a natural birth. And he asked me how. I said, I just know it. I don't know how, but I just know it. Even when I was on the labor, when I was going through the labor with the contractions, and the doctors wanted to interfere with, putting those instruments and, those deadly looking things. And I said, no. And they said, why? It's going to be easy. I said, no, because my baby has told me that she or he wants to come the natural way. And that's how it's going to be. They said, no, but you're going to suffer. I said, it's suffering only when I look at it as suffering. This isn't. This is about bringing my baby out in the most natural way possible. And I know she or he is ready to come through me and come out in that love, in that environment of love. So I said, I am ready. They put my, my legs up, the stirrups and all those things. I said, no, you're going to, take this all down. So they went and complained to the head they did all those things. I said, no, this is where, as a mother, I choose how my baby is going to come out. I feel it. I know this is right for me. This is right for my baby. And trust me, okay, for all of you, especially after Faye said, I know that what I did, I was just guided. I just listened. I just chose to listen to what my soul was saying, what my baby's soul was communicating back to me. It was that very, very surreal, very sacred space. And honestly, you don't need anybody else after that when two souls are communicating. But, when we're talking about, I honestly will not comment on the Western part of the world. I am not very aware of it. In India, for quite a number of years, Faye, and I want you to particularly address this. A lot of young mothers feel that it is easy to go through a C-section because I don't want to go. And like you said, right, drama sells. When you see women and they're screaming, I never screamed, okay? And I can't understand why are they screaming on the screen so much, okay? Because drama sells. See, young women are scared to go through the natural process and say, you know what, just cut me open. That's one. The second thing that I've also, about astrological charts, right? So in India, in some cultures, we like the baby to be born at a particular time because then we can channelize good luck, the planetary positions. So they choose the time of the birth as well. Personally, okay, like I said, okay, all you viewers and listeners, okay, I do have an opinion around that, but I feel we're tampering with the natural process of when the soul wants to arrive through us. If you were to actually address, to be expectant mothers, what would you talk about the joys or the love behind a natural birth? You've seen that's the nature of your work. You're talking about sacred birth. You talk about healing those traumas, which we can take in the next question. What is sacred birth? Is it about bringing a baby naturally out into a loving environment, or how would you suggest or advise mothers to go about this, to be mothers to go through this? Over to you.
Wow, that is huge just in itself. Because what is sacred birth? Because what sacred birth is to you might be different to what is sacred birth to somebody else. So, that's a huge area. But I think the basic thing is that, it is whatever we give meaning to in ourselves. So, and we need to honour women around this. So, it's different for every single person. So it's up to individuals to find, deep inside themselves, what is sacred birth to you? What do you give meaning to? Because to me, sacred birth is about honouring the woman and her partner and the baby and creating this sacred container for birth to happen, so that we are just like the channel or the funnel for this baby to come through. Like, we're just channeling this soul into this physical body so that they can enter physical life. And we've all journeyed that path because we were all spirit once, and then we chose to come into this physical life. So we chose our parents and all the details around, who was going to be there. We actually make soul contracts with others before we come in. And so if the mother can be aware of that and communicate with their baby, and just like you did with your beautiful daughter, and isn't it amazing and wonderful that you listened to her and you held on to that? And this is where it's really important for women to actually honour that in themselves, because so many times other people tell you don't be silly, just like you said, you're imagining it, it's all silly, crazy, let go of that, we know best, we'll tell you how things are done. No, women need to actually stay really connected to their own intuition, to their inner knowing, and be connected with the soul of their baby, because their baby has chosen them to bring them in for whatever it is that you have to offer them. And likewise, you've chosen them to come in as your baby as well. And you've made a contract around whether they'll be the first, second, third, whatever child in your family, because wherever you are stationed in the family has different responsibilities and characteristics, as you'll probably imagine. So we choose that before we actually come in. So to me, holding that container for that soul to come in through the parent that they've chosen, the parents, and and to find the space that they need to. They just need to be held in love. So wherever that is for you. So if you feel more safe in a hospital environment and you feel like you can create that sacred container in a hospital room, then that's perfect for you. If you feel like you don't like hospitals, you want to stay away from them because of everything you've heard or may have experienced, and you want to birth somewhere outside of the hospital, then that's what you need to listen to. So find somewhere else that will honour your wishes. So is it a birthing centre? So where they have a different sacred space and they actually support your wishes and respect your choices. So it's finding caregivers that will support your choices and not question you, not always tell you you're being silly. No, we can do this. No, you want pain relief. No, you want this. We want to give you a forceps birth. You know, it's better for the baby. It's better for you. No, you need to listen. And it's so good that you listened and you said no, because if we allow birth to unfold naturally and normally, it quite often does, you know. It's just that we block it and, you know, we tend to want to watch the clock and help the baby out quickly. It's a bit like the butterfly trying to get out of the cocoon. You know, they have to struggle to come out. Not that you have to struggle, because not all birth is a struggle, but that's the way we've had it, you know, ingrained in us, that it's a struggle and it's painful. That doesn't have to be the case either. Because if we listen to our body and we just open and surrender to the process, then it will be nice and calm. You know, practice hypnobirthing, for instance, you know, all the beliefs around that is that just tuning into your body and allowing it to open so that you're an open channel for this baby to come through. And if the baby's all in alignment and in the right position and you're allowing it and the hormones are working properly and your uterus is doing its thing, the baby will birth itself anyway if you're in a good position. So there's a lot of factors that come into that and different ways that you can change that. But the ultimate thing is to create a safe space so women feel safe. Because if they feel threatened in any way, like if they're scared of the hospital and they come into the hospital to birth and then they feel threatened, they're not going to be able to birth with ease because they get an adrenaline response. And adrenaline is the opposite to what we want, because adrenaline is the fight-flight response. So you're going to want to get up and run out of there as quick as you can to get away from danger. So your body shuts down, it contracts and it holds on to things. So labour is not going to happen. You know, the birth is not going to unfold easily. You have to wait until you're in a safe container. So we need to find that sacred container that's safe so that women can feel safe. And then all the correct hormones like oxytocin, the love hormone, and endorphins, which are the body's natural pain relief, that can all actually kick in and work for you. Because if you allow that to happen, then you can just birth beautifully no matter where you are, whether it's hospital, birth centre or home, or out in the ocean with the dolphins, wherever you choose to birth. You know, you can be in the rainforest, you can be wherever you want to birth, as long as you feel safe and you've got a good support team around to help you and support you and to respect your wishes. And so sacred birth to me is actually allowing all of those things, and so that the woman feels safe and her partner feels safe to be there and honoured for their role, and also so the baby comes into a space of love, because that sets the blueprint for life. If a baby comes into a space of love instead of into a space of fear, like if you're holding back, if you're scared of what's happening, if you're in pain, which comes from fear, if you're being threatened with forceps, instrumental birth, you know, waving these big tongs around and saying, we will just help it along with this, as you know, you go, no, because that sets off the fear in the mother, so the adrenaline kicks in and the adrenaline goes through to the baby. So the baby is born with a big kick of adrenaline, which is not a good blueprint for life, because they might live their life in fear then and not knowing where it comes from because it was planted at birth. So really need to have that sacred space for birth. And what was the other thing you were saying about, oh yes, so Cesarean section, when women say they'll just have a Cesarean because it's easier, that's not always the case. I mean, yes, you can have an empowered Cesarean as well. So, for instance, if there is a reason why you need a Cesarean, a medical reason. So, for instance, if you have a vasa previa where the cord is across the cervix, so you can't give birth vaginally, otherwise the baby's head will, you know, squish on the cord and cut off its own oxygen supply. Same as if the placenta is across the cervix, as in placenta previa. If things like that are happening, then you have to have a Cesarean, because there's no safe way to deliver the baby or to give birth vaginally. So then a Cesarean is necessary, and you can have an empowered Cesarean because you can create a sacred space for birth in the operating theatre. And you can ask, you can always ask for things like you can ask them to play classical music if you want. You can't have dim lights, unfortunately, because they actually need to see what they're doing. But you can ask to have them drop the screen so that you can actually witness the birth, and also ask them to pass the baby directly to you, because they can do that in theatre, so that you can actually have skin to skin straight after. There are so many things that you can actually do to have an empowered cesarean. But to say that you want to have a cesarean because it's easier rather than a natural birth, I would say think really closely about that, because a cesarean is major abdominal surgery. So you're going to be needing to recover, and it takes about 6 weeks to fully recover from a cesarean because it is major surgery. And also the fact that when you have a baby, you're trying to lift them, you're trying to breastfeed, you're trying to move about, and you may have a toddler or other children that you're trying to attend to. So your postnatal recovery is way slower and more painful if you have a cesarean, whereas if you birth naturally, it's instant. As soon as the baby's out, it just takes your body a much shorter time to just, for the uterus to contract down, for your blood loss to settle. But, immediately you go from, if you've been feeling sensations of pain as you birth the baby, because that last bit is, very intense. I don't like the word pain, because pain is a sensation and we attach a meaning to it. But it's a sensation that the body feels, and it's a good thing because it lets you know that you're giving birth. Because if we didn't have a sensation, we wouldn't know we're giving birth, and this baby would just slide out, and we'd think, oh, my gosh, you didn't have a chance to get ready and prepare and be in this beautiful space to receive your baby. So, it serves a purpose, and it's not a bad pain like when you break a leg or something, because there's nothing wrong. It's actually just your body telling you it's doing some work and you're birthing your baby. So you need to just surrender to it and allow it, and you don't have to identify it as pain. It's just a sensation, a wave. So cesarean section can be equally as empowering if you, are planning it to be that way. Down to the astrology. Now, I totally agree with you about the time of birth, because if we interfere and say we'll plan a cesarean, because we call them designer births, where, we can book the date for the baby to be born, so we know the date and the time it's going to be born, so that, it fits in with our schedule basically, or with the doctor's schedule, so they're not playing golf when you want to give birth. And you want to make sure you take maternity leave, so you want to have the baby at the beginning of your maternity leave rather than using it all up waiting for the birth to happen and then it's a month late. It's not really late, it's actually just later than you had in your mind planned. But babies come in the divine perfect timing. Babies are never late. Babies are always perfectly on time, because babies choose their birth date. They choose the astrological sequence that they need to influence their life. So if we allow the babies to choose, then they will be born at the exact right time. And a little story around that that's quite funny too is that my last child, my daughter, she was so particular about everything she wanted, and she told me that the date that she would be born, she wanted to be born on the 18th of October in this particular year, 1997, and the time of birth was going to be a multiple of 9. So I thought, it'll be 9 a.m. or something, So that day, so I put out my other daughter and I put out a little thing outside the front door to welcome her in, did a little ceremony and prayer to welcome her in the night before, because we knew she was going to arrive the next day. And sure as eggs, the next day at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m, the crows landed on the roof outside my bedroom window and started singing, and I knew that they were heralding in her arrival. And then immediately I started with the tightenings. And so I thought, oh, my gosh, that was 7 o'clock. So I thought it would be a 2-hour labour because the others had halved the time. So I thought I'll have her at 9 a.m, exactly as she said. Anyway, it didn't go like that. It went on and on all day. It went on and off. She was my longest of all the ones in birth. I stopped in the middle of it and had a sleep. And then actually, there's so much I can't share now because it's too long, but there's such a big, long story around that birth. But she ended up being born in the shower at 11 past 7 p.m. So I went all day, and then she was born at 11 past 7, which is a 9, on the 18th of October 1997. It all worked out to be a 9. But how cryptic is that? But that was exactly the time she wanted to be born. So, and the astrological influences and the numerology that came into that was perfect, and she designed it that way. So why would I want to interfere with that? It's influenced her life, and it is who she is today. So, yeah, I wouldn't interfere. I wouldn't plan a cesarean because you want to have a set birth date and time, because, you know, the baby is actually choosing that.
Oh, wow, wonderful. And just hearing that story, I mean, makes me realize there's so many mothers out there who I'm sure there's going to be changing their perception of what they've been thinking of so far. And of course, yes, do listen to your doctors, but listen to your intuition as well. Your baby is communicating, you know, through you all the time. And we were talking about what sacred birth is. So for those of you who've joined in late, we are in conversation with Faye Suzanne, all the way from Western Australia. She's a beautiful birth intuitive, and we've been talking about sacred births, the myths around C-sections and natural birth, and how the entire thing shapes up your baby's entire life. We talked about the blueprint. So we'd like to know a little bit, okay, designer births. You know, I love that word that you said, designer births. We don't need to be designing what time the baby is going to be born, because your baby's soul already knows. They have that consciousness to decide. So tampering with that is tampering with what they are meant to, the way they're meant to arrive, the time that they're meant to arrive. They know it. Trust that. So when we're talking about the blueprint, I really want to understand a little bit more about what is this blueprint that we're talking about. Is it that when we choose to tamper with it, is it that we're tampering with that blueprint, or a little bit about, can you throw light on what that would be? Because that is more or less going to cover all the other questions that I have to ask you. I have a feeling. So yeah, we're talking about, because it talks about fear. It talks about how we respond to that fear, right? How mothers are going to respond to that fear. What are the choices that we're making at that point of time? So this discussion about around blueprint is definitely going to empower to be mothers and their partners, their family, to actually even guide the mother to now go through that entire process so beautifully. So do throw light on how can we move past these fears that mothers carry into the birthing process. And what is this blueprint that we're talking about, Faye?
Okay, so the blueprint is that, we are each born with our genetic makeup. So, certain things about what sex will be, and, how the body is created, whether we're going to have blue eyes or brown hair, blonde hair, whatever, that's all part of genetics. And then there's epigenetics, which lays outside of that. So you may or may not have heard of epigenetics, but, there's a big body of work that's been done around that. And APA, the Association of Pre- and Perinatal Psychology and Health, they do a lot of work around that too. And it's a wonderful resource to tap into as well if you're wanting to learn more about epigenetics. But, they've been studying this for a long time. It's another science. It's about what actually lays outside of genetics, because there is another, there's a lot to do with the spiritual aspect, and it's like a layering around the genetics, and we can actually change that. So beliefs and different things that go into creating who we are as a person, the foundations for that are laid down preconception even, or, they're in the, when the eggs are developing and whatever, the genetics lie in that. But then as the baby develops in the womb, all of our fears, our beliefs, what we put into our body as a pregnant woman, all actually affects the baby. So this is why it's so important, that whole prenatal period, right from conception through to birth, that we are really nurturing and nourishing the baby within, because every single thing we put in there, food, emotions, thoughts, beliefs, what's going on around us, actually affects the baby, which is why, you've heard about, if you play Mozart music while you're pregnant, then that can influence the baby, and it can, create a different kind of consciousness in the baby. Same as, like, if a woman is exposed to domestic violence all through her pregnancy, that will actually affect the baby too, because they're being exposed to violence the whole time they're incubating in the womb. So the impressions they're getting are that, violence is happening all around. It's a big, scary world out there. And then if they're then born into a violent environment, like if they're being pulled out with forceps, and some people say, oh, that's not violent, but it is to a newborn baby that's just finding its way into the world. Just think, if you're in that position, if you're in this beautiful, calm place, yes, you're finding your way through the birth canal, but imagine to suddenly have this pair of metal tongs put on your head. Sometimes it's not even on the right place. Some people that aren't familiar with how to do it properly, that are learning, end up with it, in the wrong place, and the baby ends with forceps across the face. Can you imagine if this happens to you as a baby and you suddenly being ripped out faster than you're coming naturally? How is that going to impact you? Even just the tension to the neck as you're being pulled out of the birth canal quicker than you're actually wanting to come out. Because, nature is wonderful. It actually allows you to just do it in the right time. It's like chi flow, because I'm very much into feng shui as well, and it's wind and water and how the chi flows around everything. It's exactly the same in birth, because the baby is like the chi flow, but it's just finding its way down through the birth canal, because there's turns and different things, so it finds its way through. So if we can allow the baby to flow the way it's meant to and not inflict violence on it, then it will be better for, as a result in its life. But what goes in the womb is so important. So make sure we're eating healthy food, well-balanced nutrition, because it affects the building blocks of the baby's body. If we put in positive emotions, and so if we're meditating and practicing affirmations and all of that, that's emotional food going into the baby and helping it develop in that way. So the blueprint for life has been created. We can change it any time. So if you've been affected by something, we can actually go in there and heal that. So this is where the healing comes in too. So because something has happened to you doesn't mean that it's set there and permanent, because we can change it. We can go in at that epigenetic level as well as the spiritual side, and this is where I work mainly, is the spiritual aspect, because I can work with women and couples to actually tune into their higher self or their soul to find out, what's going on there energetically and emotionally, spiritually, and we can correct it. So, if you've suffered birth trauma, for instance, we can actually clear that out. We can work with it, debrief it, work through it, let it go, and then it's out of your energy stream. Same as when you're pregnant, we can communicate with the unborn baby and we can put in all the things that we want them to know and understand and believe. So telling them how much we love them, how much they're wanted. This actually creates a blueprint for life of them knowing that they're loved and wanted, as opposed to not wanted and feeling unloved and not cared for. But then their path through life will be very different, and then they'll have different challenges throughout life as a result of it. So I hope that helps to throw some light on the blueprint, and that affects everything, about how their life unfolds from that point.
Sorry, I've got tears in my eyes. Let me tell you that, okay? Those of you who are joining us right now, we're talking about Unfearing Birth, and we're in conversation with Faye Suzanne in this next episode, where we're discussing natural birth, allowing. I like the word, throughout the episode, you've used the word allow. It's a natural flow things, and the baby soul just knows, so it's about creating that environment, and that's the beauty of what Faye Suzanne actually does. So supporting the entire family, supporting the mother to actually, it's not about, okay, I'm scared, what do I do? And I'm sure there are apprehensions that every mother goes through, Faye, and that's my next question to you. Hearing you, I'm sure a lot of women at this point of time understand that they have to empower themselves first to make those informed choices at that moment, because it's very easy. I'm going through labor, and like you said, the word pain means different things to different people. The threshold of pain is so different for every woman. But when we start attaching and associating, saying this is a natural process, I'm going to allow this process to unfold. The baby is also, you're trusting your baby, and you're working literally as a team. Everybody's working as a team. We're not separate. And that's a sad part about hospitals, let me tell you, okay? Everybody is doing their job. It's just another commercial activity. The mother never feels comfortable, because it's like, I felt rushed. With my second baby, I did feel very rushed. And I told the doctor that, you know what, I'm going to take my time because my baby knows when. I knew both the times I'm going to be having, a daughter. Despite the fact the elders in the family said, no, I think you're going to have a boy. I said, I think it's just your, you just want that as a desire. Indians love boys, right? Not generalizing, please don't kill me. I know there are a lot of us who love girls, so this is not a general comment. But that was what I was told. But I said, no, I'm going to have a girl. She took her own time. She decided, and the doctor said, you know what, it's going to be, I don't think you need to come back tomorrow. I said, no, she's coming out today. Second time, it was a male gynecologist. I said, you know what, she's coming today. How do you know? I think I've got to send you. I said, she's coming today. I was holding on and I said, wheel me to the labor room because I know she's coming. That's it. So yes, contrary to, how, the entire thing is being commercialized. And I guess I like what you said is the allowing, the complete trust, the surrender that you do is, and surrender is not just doing, it's about allowing. So just completely be in that flow. The guidance just happens. So Faye, I mean, we discussed, sacred birth. We talked about astrological positions, designer births. We spoke about how, the blueprint, how the mother, the environment, the thoughts that you put inside of you, the what you want to pick from the environment. How do you want to respond to the environment, especially when you're carrying a baby in your womb? What are the things that you should eat? I think I like what you said because now women across the world, when you're listening to Faye in this episode, you will start to become aware. If you haven't already, start to pay very close attention now to that. So my question now to you, and we can wrap up after this because you covered everything, so I don't have to interject anywhere now, which I love. So what should a woman do? And I'm using the word should because it starts to more become a guidance from you. What should a woman who is going to now, let's say she's planning a pregnancy, or let's say a mother, an expectant mother, whether she's in the first trimester, second or third, let's say she's got these misconceptions around birth, and the pandemic has done so much, has driven so much of fear in a woman. I know of people who said, I'm not going to get pregnant till the pandemic is over. I hear these kind of things. Okay. So let's say there's someone right now who's planning a pregnancy or is unsure about it or is already pregnant. What is it that you would, through, being a birth intuitive, being in the space of, creating the sacred space for the entire family and for the mother and for the beautiful baby, what would you tell them? What should she do? How can she be in charge? How can she be in the space of allowing at this very moment? What would you tell her?
So firstly, if they haven't conceived as yet, this is the perfect time to have conscious conception. So get really clear on what it is that you want, what you would like to bring in, how this is going to affect your life and the world. And I see so many fears in people these days talking about, not wanting to bring a child into the world with the current things that are going on. That's one of the big fears, actually. And what I say to them is that there are so many beautiful advanced souls waiting to come in now because they need to bring their light to planet Earth. So we need you, if you're a conscious person listening to this, which you must be if you're here listening to this, we need conscious parents to bring in these beautiful light souls to come into the earth to do their work. They're here to teach us and to show us the way and to shine their beautiful bright light on the world because they're coming from a really high vibrational frequency. So please allow them in if you're feeling like that. And we do have extra challenges at this time with COVID, especially around birth choices and the fear around whether or not you'll be able to birth in the hospital because your partner might not be able to come with you. You may not have your support team. You may not be able to have anybody come and visit you after. All of these things are now getting people to be, actually it's great because it's making them think more about other options, and more women are turning to home birth and free birth because they're taking their power back. And so I just want to talk to you about the hospital thing, and just remember too that birth workers in the hospital are traumatised as well. So that's where a lot of fear comes from also, is from them reflecting it onto you, because what they witness day in, day out too, they haven't had a chance to debrief birth and to heal their own birth trauma, which is why I'm passionate about doing that work now, is to help birth workers to heal their own birth trauma so that they can show up and support you when you come into the hospital, because that way they can overcome their own fear and not bring it into the birthing space. And it's also really important that when you create your own birth team, that nobody that is coming with you is carrying their own fears and trauma. They all need to do the work to release their own trauma so that they're there supporting you. And so also part of that picture, I say turn off the TV because TV and the media is actually feeding your fears every day. Every single day there is like a fear-based mentality going out, and if you switch it on, you're just going to be absorbing that all the time. So for you don't need to hear it, and your baby in the womb, if you're carrying a baby at the moment, does not need to be bringing that in, because remember, that's what goes into the womb and it affects the baby as well. Don't need fear-based media. And then so surround yourself with positive people that actually support you and are on the same wavelength. So, reach out to all your soul sisters, or, this platform. I know, you offer a beautiful service. So, reach out to these beautiful networks that support you, that are on the same wavelength, because there's an unlimited number of resources there to support you. Align yourself with people who support you and respect your choices, and be in alignment with those. And the main thing is to trust your intuition. Get back in touch with who you are, why you're here, and remember that you've made soul contracts with others in this lifetime, and these babies coming in through you, you've made a contract to bring them in, and they're choosing you as their parents because they know what it is that you have to offer them. So embrace that and offer them whatever it is that they're asking you, and be open to hearing what they have to say, so that you can then work as a team. And you can channel this beautiful being into planet Earth to live this human existence and become part of this, ever-evolving humanity that is working towards peace and love. We need these beings of light coming in right now, and we need conscious parents that are bringing them in, that are opening themselves up and saying, yes, come in, I'm here. That is the most important role of all, to step up and say yes to welcoming in these souls. So thank you for that, for taking up the challenge.
It's so uncanny, I'm really, I'm going to get creeped out after some time, because anything that I want to actually mention after you've finished, she's already mentioned it. So I want to talk about conscious conception, conscious parenting, and she's like said it all. You made my job really simple today by covering everything, and that's so beautiful. Because like you yourself mentioned, Faye, it's people coming in together and working together as one unit. And that's what I want every woman here, every single mother to understand, that whether you're planning a pregnancy or whether you're about to give birth, know that you're not alone. Trust your intuition. That's what Faye said. Trust your intuition. Trust your baby. Your baby and you are actually, a team working together at this point of time. And simply allow. Start to become conscious. That's the message that I got right from the beginning. It's about becoming aware. It's about listening to your own soul, your essence beginning to guide you from within. And I think being in that silent space, there's so much that you can hear. It's about the consciousness and tapping into your own consciousness to welcome a wonderful, wonderful soul into this earth in love. And that's what we want, right? We want to welcome that beautiful, beautiful baby into an environment of love. Thank you so much, Faye, for joining us. And you never cease to amaze me. We honor and love your presence. Every single person here who has, is going to be listening to you, watching you, and literally, picking off those beautiful energies. And I love the way you show up no matter what. Thank you for being you. And so,
thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me again. Thank you. Such an honor to be here.
It's our pleasure. And we're going to call Faye again. And for those of you who want to get in touch with Faye, when you want to talk, when she's talking about healing birth traumas. Honestly, I feel, Faye, that should be a separate topic, okay? Because there's so much to talk about it. So we'll call back Faye again very soon because there's so much. But for those of you who want her expertise, her guidance, all the description is going to be at the end of the video and the podcast. So please do reach out to Faye, and she's such a beautiful, beautiful soul. I feel your energies. Thank you so much. Mwah. Love
Thank
you.
you. Love you
So,
too.
guys, yes, here's at the end of this episode of Unfear Sutra. We were talking about unfearing birth along with Faye Suzanne, who's a birth intuitive. So you know what you've got to do. Write into us and tell us if you've loved this episode, and do get in touch with Faye. You are going to simply love her as much as I do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Your greatness.